Hello, I want to welcome our viewers back to this week's edition of Conversations with John. I am very excited to introduce most of you, our listeners, for the first time to Stuart Muszynski. Stuart is the CEO of a company called Values in Action, and they have been a part of both a national and a Cleveland expression of a Just Be Kind movement that the United Church of Christ is proud to be a sponsor of. Stuart, welcome. Glad to have you here. Why don't you say a little bit more about who you are and the organization you represent and what you're doing?
Well, thank you, John, and thanks for all the good works and the moral voice that UCC has in our country and around the world. In these times, we need those moral voices to speak out and to stand up, and that's what UCC has stood for since your inception. And thank you so much for continuing that tradition,
Which is so neat.
Well, Values in Action, John, as you know, is a 26-year-old public charity. We're based in Cleveland. We have programming now in 2,500 elementary through high school schools in all 50 states and 4 countries, representing over 500,000 students. Several years ago, we identified 12 shared values that all Americans shared. We did that by interviewing 1,000 plus regular, ordinary Americans on the streets and asking them, what are the values that connect us as Americans and what do Americans stand for? And we got the same answers, whether in Cleveland or New York City or Williamsport, Pennsylvania, or Los Angeles or Atlanta or St. Paul, Minnesota, etc. We noticed 4+ years ago that people were taking opposite sides of those core values. So people were saying, your equality takes away from my equality. Your freedom takes away from my freedom. Your opportunity takes away from my opportunity. Well, you can't have a country that is a melting pot with people choosing those polarities. You have to be able to say that we're all on the spectrum of equality. We're all on the spectrum of opportunity. We want everyone to have that. And we were very disturbed, and we went back to our programming people and we started doing research on what we felt would be the overriding core value that all Americans could jump on board, even in a time where we were politically polarized. And we felt that value is kindness. Because you can't choose the opposite polarity of kindness. That's meanness. You can't say my kindness is taking away from your kindness, because actually it adds to your kindness. The simple fact that is scientifically proven is that one act of kindness has an impact on 3 other people. And then it continues going. It's like that pebble in the pond that we throw in the pond that has ripples and ripples and ripples, and it just keeps on going. Now, there's a countervailing force that can keep on going. And we call that negativity. It's not meanness necessarily, but it's negativity. So we're in this cosmic battle right now of kindness versus negativity. And we determined that we need to make kindness the overriding core value in our country. And we did that by launching our Just Be Kind campaign, which was launched early this year as a social media campaign. And then next year, we'll gravitate to institutions in corporate America incentivizing their constituents to do acts of kindness and report those acts of kindness under the hashtag Just Be Kind. Now, as we were presenting this to the media in Cleveland, the Cleveland media actually asked us, can we come up with something for our community to demonstrate that a whole community can jump into kindness and make that the core value of an entire community? And so we came up with the idea that in 2020, we want to make Cleveland kindland, and for Cleveland to set the country. And that is what we just launched a little over. And you, John, personally have jumped on board of that as well. And a lot of business leaders in Cleveland. It's interesting that the African American community in Cleveland has said to us, this kindland can really be a bridge, because isn't that ultimately what we want? If we have a community that's called kindland, it's not a racially biased community. It's not a power down community. It's not a hateful community. It's a kind community where all ships rise. And we believe that that is very much in keeping with the legacy of George Floyd, and also in keeping with the legacy, the aspirational values of our country, of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness and opportunity for all, and equal justice under the law. Those are all aspirational values that find their way into Just Be Kind and into kindland.
So you and I first got to know each other when earlier this year, as Values in Action, you gave an award to Otis Moss. Otis Moss being one of the notable pastors of one of the largest, if not the largest, United Church of Christ at Trinity in Chicago. And it was in preparing for the work that you did around that and celebrating his ministry and his contributions to your Value in Action that I discovered not just the Values in Action side of what you do, but the kindness campaign. And we immediately resonated and recognized that our mutual organizations needed to be in partnership with one another. We have been doing our own, and you can see my banner over here, 3 Great Loves campaign, inviting our churches to demonstrate how their love of children, love of neighbor, and love of creation ushers kindness into the world. And our missional focus as a denomination is to love all, to welcome all, to seek justice for all. And our vision is a just world for all. And so all of that is so compatible with what you envisioned the work of kindness to be. And so you and I have spent the last few months talking about what this partnership means to both of us. And we are proud and honored to be partnering with you. When we started this conversation, we didn't know there would be a global pandemic. When we started this conversation, we didn't know that the country would once again embroil itself in a fervor for racial equity and racial justice following another brutal murder of an unarmed Black man. And yet here we are, and the call to kindness seems as relevant now as it ever has been. And these partnerships that we forge along the way seem as necessary as they ever have been. And I know you feel the same way.
That's so true. And you know, someone asked me this morning, Spectrum Television did an interview regarding our Kindland campaign here in Cleveland. And the reporter asked me, do you have a personal reason why kindness is so important to you? And I said, come to think of it, I mean, I don't talk about this often, but come to think of it, I said, I do. I said, my parents and grandmother were victims of the Holocaust in Poland. They were running for their lives. And my grandmother was the Jewish dentist in a little town southeast of Warsaw, And she befriended, and she was the dentist to the Jewish population, the non-Jewish population. She volunteered at the private Christian school, private Catholic school, because Poland is predominantly Catholic. And she volunteered at the private Jewish school to do dentistry work. And this lady she befriended never forgot the kindness that my grandmother gave her. And when my parents and grandmother were running for their lives, and it appeared that all doors were closing, they were 2 years into the Holocaust, running from place to place, hiding in the woods, hiding in holes, hiding in broken down shacks, and there was no place else to hide. My father went to the children of this lady and left a note on their doorstep in the middle of Warsaw, Poland. And he said, "We're running for our lives. The Nazis are closing in on us. We have only you to turn to." And they took my parents and grandmother in, and they returned the act of kindness. So that is that pay it forward that keeps on going.
And here you are, 2 generations later, and that's your story. And as you say, the pay it forward dynamic of one act of kindness, sending those ripples out into the pond, becoming now a movement. And in a time when the world is so desperately in need of that. What a powerful story. And
well, you know what? There's more that I want to share that is even more bone chilling than this movement. So before COVID broke out, in middle of January, towards the end of January, I got a phone call from the son of the people who hid my parents.
Oh my.
Well, I call my Polish brother. We stay in touch every month. We talk to each other. And he said, in the New Year's Eve, 1941, the Gestapo came to his parents' apartment and knocked on the door. German Shepherd right there, rifles in tow, and they were looking for his father, who was in the Polish resistance. Little did they know that there were 3 Jews being harbored in the apartment. And they had a Polish maid who was 16 years old, whose name was Yaja. And Yaja slammed the door in the face of the Gestapo and put the chain on the door and said in Polish that she can't get the chain off, they have to wait. In the meantime, she motioned to my parents and grandmother to run out the other door, and my grandmother and parents had lived yet another day. So my Polish brother called me and said that this Polish maid's son, Christoph, has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The Polish doctors can't do anything more for him. Can I help him? I happen to have had one of my closest friends who lived for 5 years with stage 4 pancreatic cancer because he was taking a substance from a microbiologist in London who created a plant-based substance that cures pancreatic cancer. And I put this man and his family in touch with this microbiologist who decided to help them at no cost. And now, 4 months later, this man's tumor is shrinking. So that's how powerful kindness is, that it just keeps on going. It just keeps on going. It just keeps on circulating in the universe. We never know where it's going to go, but it just keeps on going.
It's as if the universe takes note of these acts of kindness and stores that away for the time when the kindness needs to be returned. It's
Absolutely.
wonderful. Well,
Absolutely.
Stuart, every conversation I have with you is one that endears me even more deeply to you and this movement. we are certainly proud for the partnership that we are forging and look forward to what this will bring to bear. I want to thank my viewers for tuning in and listening to this remarkable conversation. And as always, I give our guest the last word. Stuart, what do you want to say to our viewers?
Well, we are so proud to have UCC on board of the Just Be Kind movement, and we can all be the kindness ambassadors that transform our communities and our country. Please sign the Just Be Kind pledge at VIAFDN, VIAFDN as in foundation, .org/justbekind. And you can also go on to justbekind.us and sign the pledge. It's a pledge to spread kindness. It's a pledge to be one of the ambassadors spreading kindness. And we look forward to creating a tipping point in our country toward kindness along with UCC. I want you to know that UCC is our primary partner in this. And we are kindred souls with UCC and with all of UCC's members. And together we could do this. We can create a country of kindness. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Together we can do this. We can create a country of kindness. May it be so. Thank you, Stuart, and thank you to our viewers. We'll see you again next week. This is John Dorhauer with Conversations with John.